I would like to acknowledge that this video is being filmed on the traditional lands of the Wurrundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander or First Nations people who may be watching this video today. Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a books beside my bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. This is my reading week from the 18th until the 23rd of December. I read a total of 10 things this week, although the majority of them were short stories and or novellas. There's only a couple of full-length novels included in this list, and I had a lot of fun because it was my last week of the work for the year. I don't go back until the 27th of January. So to me, this is reading season. This is open season on reading. I'm going to start with a book that I read that is not a holiday romance, and this was a review copy that I received from the author. It was Entranced by the Basilisks by Lillian Lark, who you guys know I love. I started reading her. I went back and worked this out in June or July last year, and I have not looked back. The first book I ever read by her was Tangled Wires, and that is a very, very cool dark sci-fi romance. I still have not read anything quite like that, and since then I have just been obsessed, and this is her most recent release, which is coming out at the end of the month. And this links to Deceived by the Gargoyles because it is the heroine from that book's best friend. So we have Amelia, who is a book restoration expert, and the book opens sort of with the crux of the problem for the book, which is the fact that she has opened a magical book. She is aware of the magical world or the supernatural world that exists, but she herself is human. She opens this book to restore it, and then she is cursed. And the book is about her trying to break this curse because essentially she has acquired Gorgon-like abilities. So she has snakes for hair and her gaze can turn people to stone. And obviously she wants to get rid of this because she's a human, she doesn't want it, it's stressing her out, it's causing her anxiety, and she just wants it gone. Her boss, who she has always believed to be quite aloof and who doesn't like her, is a basilisk, and he offers to help her, and the only way that he can help her is by connecting her to his lover. And the two of them have just had this falling out because while Jasper loves Arvi wants something more, and Jasper is concerned that his status within the supernatural basilisk society will bring Arvi down. But of course, when Jasper brings Amelia to Arvi is determined to make this situation work between the three of them. It is an MMF swords cross romance. It is great. If you like monster romances, you're going to like this one. I thought it was very cool. I will content warning for the fact that there are deceptions and manipulations by one of the lovers in this trio, and that's because he is desperately trying to make sure that the three of them end up together, and there are consequences for his actions. So I appreciated that, in that his manipulations were not just brushed over as something that they could just forgive easily. It is dealt with, so just be aware of that going into it, because that's normally not something I love. I also really liked how we saw Amelia have to deal with her transformation, and the fact that, you know, she's really not okay with it initially, but as she learns to understand what's happened to her and how to control it, her view and her perception of herself begins to change because she begins to see the positives. So it takes you from that panic stage right through to acceptance and understanding. And I think that is also really important, that we don't skip any of those steps. She is allowed to feel her feelings and to be upset and scared and afraid of what is happening to her. So I really, really love this. Thank you very much to Lillian for sending me a copy of it because I adored it. I cannot wait to get a copy of this for my shelves. Her covers for her monster romances are just gorgeous. Like, well done, cover artists. They're amazing. All right, and then we'll jump into all of the holiday themed romances that I read. So the first one I read was a novella set in Lily Mayne's Soul Eater world, which I keep forgetting to check the series name. I should know this because I love this series. Monstrous? I don't know. Anyway, it must be Monstrous because it's called A Monstrous Christmas in the Camp, and this is set after all the current books, so there will be spoilers because all of the characters appear in this novella. We get a chapter from every single character who we have met in one of the previous books, and it is all about a Christmas celebration that the humans in the camp that is set up in the wastes is putting together, and they've invited the monsters. The monsters are helping to contribute to it. Eden is very, very excited about it. He is a very naughty Santa, just putting it out there. Every character tells one part of the event in sequence. So you start with the setting up, and so some of those characters, you get their perception of that part of the story, then you have the night, and then you have the day after. And it was just fun, very steamy. There are some very interesting scenes, but the whole thing was just fun and light-hearted and just celebrated how far all of these characters have come. And, you know, Win is still very, very grumpy. He just does not like humans at all. And I kind of still love him for that. Then I read another short story in another series that I love, and this was the RELIC series by Maz Maddox. So this is the Dinosaur Shifter series. And this one was called the RELIC Holiday Short Story. It doesn't need any other name than that. It is about them celebrating Christmas. Montana takes all of his team out to this theme park that is like a winter theme park because they don't have snow. And they also take along the newest person that they've recruited, Henry, who is still acclimatizing to living in the present day. But Henry gets very excited about the ice skating and he drags Montana onto the ice. And Montana is very cautious about this because, you know, he is a T-Rex and T-Rexes on ice skates. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. In terms of the story, it was a fantastic thing because it was a very sweet short story and it is really setting up, I think, their full-length novel, which I'm very, very excited about. So it was nice just to have this little slice of life moment during the holiday season. Then I read 2 Louisa Masters novellas / short stories. I think the longest one is about 50 pages. The first one was Oh Hello Ye Shoppers. This is an MM romance between 2 men who meet while doing last minute Christmas shopping in a mall and Christmas chaos. Like, no thank you. And they bond over the fact that it is just absolutely chaos personified in the shop. And then they also discover that they have mutual connections. Their siblings are dating. This sparks conversation. They go and have lunch. And it's like literally a slice of life. It was super short. And then there is A Christmas Chance, also by Louisa Masters. And this one is set in Paris, and Paris native Paul is always very wary of tourists, but one day before Christmas he happens to notice like a pickpocket approaching a group of tourists, and so he warns them. And one of the tourists is an Australian guy who is very appreciative of the fact that Paul saved them a lot of hassle from having to deal with the after effects of possibly having valuables and or passports and etc. stolen, and he offers to take Paul out for dinner. Against his better judgment, Paul agrees to this, and they both, you know, agree that neither of them are serial killers, which always important. And it sort of sparks this very whirlwind, very casual sort of Christmas fling with the knowledge that it's going to be very short because Jacob, the Australian guy, is going to be heading home for Christmas. But everyone is telling Paul, just take the chance, just enjoy the happiness for the time that it lasts, etc. But of course, they begin to fall for one another, but there is a little bit of a twist that makes the whole thing okay. So it was short, it was sweet, and it was just a fun little holiday story. And then I read this gem of a book. This is Tic-Tac-Mistletoe. It is the first book in her Heartbridge series. This is about an Australian guy called Hamish whose sister lives in the States, and he decides to pack up everything. His life in Australia is just not going great, and he just decides to pack up and move to the States for 2 years to see if he can make it work, because he'll be close to his sister and family and it'll be great. Except as he's flying in, there's a snowstorm, so his plane gets diverted to a completely different state, which freaks him out, and then he has to drive a rental car through a snowstorm, and he ends up driving the car into a ditch, and he's rescued by Heartbridge local Ren. As Ren rightly points out, Hamish can't really travel anywhere at the moment because it's not driving conditions, and so he offers his spare room for him to stay the night until conditions clear and they can get the car towed and all of that. And Ren himself is dealing with some things. His father passed away between last Christmas and this one, so it's his first Christmas with no family. At this time, the only queer person in town, and he has sort of just resigned himself to the fact he's never going to meet anyone because he loves his small town. He doesn't want to move. These two hit it off straight away. There is so much chemistry between the two of them. There is so much banter. If you like pop culture references for Schitt's Creek, Legally Blonde, if you like the fact that people mention Chris Evans in books, it happens at least twice in this story. It was just so fun. I laughed out loud. I just enjoyed my time reading this so much. It is not very long. It is a very, very quick read, and N.R. Walker is just a fantastic Australian author. So much so that I knew I would come back and read another book in this series, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then I read A Wolf in Winter by Tiffany Reisz. This is the latest addition to sort of the Original Sinners universe. It is a novella. It does feature BDSM and kink, so if that's not your thing, I would skip this one. Actress Sheridan is gifted one night with the big bad wolf of the kink scene. His name is Brad Wolfe, hence the nickname, and she turns up at his place. They have a scheduled 2-hour block. She is a submissive. He is a service dom, which I had not heard that term before, and I'm going to come back to it. So Sheridan is normally one of Mistress Nora's subs, and Nora is moving away, so she has gifted this session with Brad, who she thinks will take care of Sheridan. And he does, and it's super steamy, very hot, and at the end of the 2 hours, they realise that Sheridan can't go home because the storm has gotten really bad outside. They're basically snowed in. The conditions aren't good for driving, and so she's going to stay just for the night. And he takes care of her. They realise, you know, beyond the scene that they have this connection. They talk to each other really easily. He recognises a lot of things in her and is able to help her through them. She's really struggling a little bit with what she wants to do and the fact that she's an actress and she can't really have any permanent relationships with anyone, particularly anyone in the scene, because it could potentially ruin her career, but also the careers of people who work with her, like her agents and all of that sort of thing. Anyway, so you have that first little scene, and then we flash forward about 10 months. And this is because Sheridan has said, no, I'm not interested in pursuing anything. And Brad tells her, well, I'll wait. You see how you go, and I'll wait, and we can revisit this at a later time. And so they've had 10 miserable months where they're not together. Thankfully, we don't have to sit through that because it's a novella length. And then Sheridan is meeting up with Nora. They get a bit of perspective. Sheridan has to make decisions about what she wants. Does she want what she wants for herself, or does she want what she wants for other people whose opinions ultimately in the end don't really matter? So I really kind of liked that story arc and how Sheridan grew as a character, even in like a 100-page novella. Coming back to Brad, he was an absolute delight of a dominant character, because quite often we get the dominants who stay dominant even outside of scenes because that's just their personality, and that is totally fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But it was interesting, I hadn't heard the term service dom, and that is what Brad is, in that he does what he does in scenes because that's what his submissives need, but he's easily able to switch that off afterwards and see past the scene. And I really liked that about him, because it made him, I think, a more approachable character. And you had a lot of sympathy for him, because we don't spend as much time in his point of view as we do in Sheridan's. Yeah, we just don't see that often, and I really liked him. Then I read Lovelight Farms by B.K. Borison. This is one that has been doing the rounds, and I thought it had originally been released in the current year, but I think it was 2021. I totally missed it, but it does have a very gorgeous illustrated cover. It's very pretty. And this is about Stella, who owns a Christmas tree farm, and she has 2 partners who help her manage the farm and the cafe on site. And it's been her dream. She's owned this property for a year, but things are not going great. They're losing money, supplies have been going missing, someone's been pranking the farm and causing issues, and she doesn't really want to admit to anyone they're having some financial issues. In order to save the farm, she decides to enter herself and the farm into this influencers competition to win a cash prize. She becomes one of the finalists, but the only problem is she knew that this influencer loves a love story, and so she lied and said that she owns this farm with her boyfriend, and so she needs to find someone to be her fake boyfriend for the week. Enter her best friend Luca, who has been in love with her for the entire time. Now, I should say this entire story is told in single POV, except for a couple of scenes like the epilogue and a post-scene chapter that are told from Luca's perspective, so I don't count that because the entire book is single POV. And just from the way that Stella describes Luca, we know that he is in love with her. We also know that she loves him, but she can't say it. Anyway, she asks him to be her fake boyfriend for the week, and he agrees. Of course he does. Why wouldn't he? And the two set about trying to save the farm, and it was just fun. It was very holiday feels, and look, Stella was a bit clueless, but as a very clueless person myself, like I can't fault her for that. I just really enjoyed reading the story. It's over 400 pages, but it read really quickly, and I will be continuing the series because I'm so intrigued by the other characters. Then I read the sequel to Tic-Tac-Mistletoe, which was Christmas Wishlist by N.R. Walker, so the second book in the Heartbridge series. Okay, so this is about Cass, who is a Heartbridge local who is divorced from his wife and separated from her because he could no longer pretend that he wasn't gay. So he's bought this old manor, or inherited it, I can't remember, but it belonged to his family, and he's done it up as a bed and breakfast in town. And it's his first Christmas season. He's about to have his first clients at the B&B, and so he's hired a young chef called Jaden, who is an Australian expat who is trying to work out what he wants to do next. He's lived in the States for about 12 years and he moves around a lot, and he figures this temporary Christmas gig sounds great. He'll be in charge of the kitchen. And so he turns up at Cass's bed and breakfast, and he's just amazed by the place. But the place is still in need of some TLC before the clients arrive in a couple of days, because Cass has a habit of starting one project and then getting distracted and starting something else. Totally relate. Exhibit A. This is me. And Cass is only just newly out as gay, and he's only told a few people, and he surprises himself when he tells Jaden, over a conversation. There's an attraction between the two of them, but they agree that no, they're not going to do anything because they're working together, and Cass is really concerned that if something happens then he's going to lose his chef for the holiday season, and he doesn't want that to happen. And so they strike up this deal about they'll wait until just after Christmas. Just like the first book, this was super sweet. Something that I really loved is that we do see Cass's ex-wife in the story and his two kids, and there's still a really great relationship between Cass and his ex-wife. Like, there's a whole lot of sadness and a whole lot of grief, but they're both starting to move on with their life, and they recognize that they're still friends. Like, they've had kids together, they've lived this life together, but there is still a friendship there. And even though Cass has hurt her, she also recognizes that he wasn't happy, which I like seeing that kind of relationship, because now they have this big extended family, which is really cool. There's a whole lot of really fun moments, like setting up the kitchen. There's a whole lot of baking that is talked about in this book, and food, and so don't read this on an empty stomach because you will want food. Cass's kids were absolutely gorgeous. I loved seeing them in the story. There's a whole lot of small town Christmas stuff that goes on. Like, it was just a very, very sweet book. Still plenty of pop culture references in here, different from the first book. They even mentioned Eureka, which is one of my favorite sci-fi TV shows. I think that show is hilarious. I just appreciate the way that N.R. Walker is able to weave all of these elements together and make a really sweet story that is also very steamy, that you just sit there and you just read it and you go, this is great. This is just a nice reading experience. And then the final thing that I read this week, I think was a reread for me. I couldn't remember having read it when I started it, and then I started reading it and I'm like, no, I've read this before. And it's Sap and Spile by Vera Valentine. It is not necessarily a Christmas story, but it has the same vibes because it's set in the middle of nowhere amongst pine trees. It's snowing. Like, it just has that feeling. You have Miller, whose ex-husband cheated on her but didn't divorce her, started living a new life with his younger partner, bought a maple farm, and then is killed in an accident, leaving Miller with all the debts because all of their accounts were still linked. And so she suddenly got possession of this maple farm, and she's out one day trying to sort out what is going on with it, and she ends up caught out in the snow, not wearing the right gear, and then two dryads find her, and these are tree men essentially, and it is their relationship. It's super short. I think it's 50 pages or less. It's a very short monster romance. Vera Valentine always does some really interesting things with her stories. So yes, I totally forgot that I'd read it, and so I read it again. In the comments, I would love to know if you've read any of these books, or if you're planning on picking any of them up. Merry Christmas to those who celebrate, or happy holidays for people celebrating other holidays or just enjoying the season. I hope wherever you are in the world, you are staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.